brought you back to a good spot for you to like dive right back into it. This is what happens when colorblind people make tables. Okay, so you have to test your game. You will lose sight of how challenging your game is. I don't really want to go all over this, but I do want to talk about fishbowl testing, which is something we started doing working on Alpha Protocol. It's one of the best moves we did. Fishbowl testing is where you pull in someone who does not work on your game, and you sit them down in your office, and you get all the relevant developers to form a ring around them, and you watch them play the game. You tell them, go ahead, ask questions, go ahead and vent everything that you're thinking inside, but then when they ask a question, you just ignore them. The idea is the game doesn't come with a freeze-dried developer in the box telling you how to play the game. This is actually a really excruciating experience as you watch someone get to a point in your game where you're like, this is so easy, why can't you figure this out? But you just have to sit there and take notes, and you have to watch them get frustrated. And it's some of the best feedback on noticing things that you miss. I mean, beta testing is great, focus testing is great, but the fishbowl testing is the best thing we ever did. I want to talk real briefly about adaptive difficulty. This is like my version of porn. This is a game that is changing the difficulty as you're playing it. I just love this. It makes me wish I had studied programming in college. I want to talk about two games that use adaptive difficulty really, really well. Resident Evil 4 uses a very quiet adaptive difficulty. You might get killed by 12 zombie Spaniards, and then when you reload, they might have 10% less health, or there might be 11 zombie Spaniards. Or there might just be a little bit more ammo where you hadn't looked before. What they're doing is they're realizing that you're failing, and they want to reduce the frequency of that failure. The cost of the failure is the same. You're still going back to the same checkpoint, but at least your frequency and likelihood of failing is going down. So adaptive difficulty can work really well out of sight. Sin Episodes took this system and was much more overt about it. In Sin Episodes, the game is constantly updating based on almost everything you do. You kill a lot of guys real quickly, they send reinforcements. Shoot them in the head a bunch, they get the memo to maybe put on a helmet. Conversely, if you're not doing very well, if it took you forever to get from point A to point B, it's going to send less guys at you. They're going to go to the Imperial Academy of Stormtrooper Marksmanship. This was so well done and so well implemented that the developers were able to pull in a big group of focus testers from all sorts of casual gamer and hardcore gamer spectrum of skill levels. And there's this one section of the game that they all beat in 54 minutes plus or minus 3 minutes, which is absolutely nutty. If there's a game that like me and my grandmother can both play and beat in roughly the same time frame, that's magic. There's a good argument against adaptive difficulty that there's something to be said for having fixed goalposts in your game. You might want to have this part of your game that is X units of pain challenging, and you can either get it or you can't, and that helps you measure how far you've gotten. But again, the fact that so many diverse players can play Sin Episodes and see the end of it and roughly the same time, that's the future. So sadly, you always have to think about the players. It'd be great if you could ignore everything that goes on in their head, but that's an entire presentation in and of itself, but I want to just quickly get at some things that we certainly sometimes forget. You need to remember your player's ego and name your difficulty settings with care. If you only have 2 difficulty settings and you name them easy and normal, everyone's going to choose normal because it hurts their pride to select easy, even if no one's watching them. You're better off naming them normal and hard if you think the lesser of the difficulty levels is what they should actually be playing it on. I mean, ideally you offer 3 or 5 or as many as possible. You also have to come to the sad realization that no one will care about your manual. It's terrible, but they're even going to ignore most of the content in your tutorial as well. So you have to make sure that there's redundant information, and you have to make sure that the information comes slow enough that the players will absorb it. When I was watching that Dead Rising 2 video, and the fact that they had on the load screen the controller setup is brilliant, because players aren't going to read the manual. So just always have all this redundant teaching to keep that learning curve where it should be. And if your AI has to cheat, do it with subtlety. Don't be F-Zero. Don't be the game that, the racing game where the guy in second place is always right behind you no matter how fast you're going. It is less frustrating to die several times to a tough AI, a consistently tough AI, than it is to die once to an AI that should be easy but then cheats just when you think you've got it outsmarted. So enough abstract crazy talk. I want to talk about how all this actually factored into my job. So real quickly, Alpha Protocol is a third-person shooter RPG hybrid coming out for a bunch of platforms. I started working on this game in February 2006, started growing the beard in June of 2009, have regretted it ever since. I'm actually really, really pleased with the final level of challenge in this game. It didn't come to us easily, and I would love it if everyone could learn from our mistakes and learn from our successes. And because my boss paid for me to be here, shameless plug, It's available on June 1st. June 1st is also the day that I get rid of my beard, so I'm super excited. So Alpha Protocol had a lot of obstacles in its way to making the perfect challenge. A lot of obstacles. We chose to do a real-world setting. This meant that our NPCs were all human. We didn't have dinosaurs and ninjas and ghosts and cyborgs. Everything kind of fit into this uncanny valley of requiring a lot of animation, a lot of programming, and we were constrained with how they could actually present challenges to the player. They had to act like humans. It was really important that we have a story that you can play out in any fashion. We wanted you to have a whole laundry list of mysteries to solve around the world as a spy, but we didn't want you to actually have to do it in any set order, which created some problems as to how to make our levels difficult. And we also had another major mandate of have lots of solutions. Every part of the game, you should be able to like sneak through it, shoot it, use traps, use hand-to-hand combat, use the environment. So we had to plan for lots of different in-game advantages and lots of different player expertise on those different ways of solving the game. And this one snuck up on us. The long development time meant that we were just sort of desensitized to the challenge. Maybe early on we thought we had a good handle on how easy or hard the game was, but after 4 years, we were clueless. So first of those, the most technical, was making the AI better. So our NPCs were all human, and we had to do everything under the, we couldn't have them throwing fireballs at you, and we couldn't have them teleporting. We had to use human-like behaviors. And this is a case where I think we actually over-designed. We were so intent on having a distinct easy, medium, hard mode that we went as far as like, okay, there needs to be an easy human being and a medium human being and a hard human being. This is a really cruel thing to do to the AI programmers, and it also didn't really work. It's true that they gave us the challenge we wanted, but like, especially with the easy AI, he just stopped looking like a human. They were doing really dumb things like just standing in place as you were shooting them, and we realized that while we were getting the difficulty we want, we were killing the immersion. We were very justifiably making the artists and the story people really unhappy with what it was like. Well, I did this. We later wisely changed it to a much more efficient solution. We had the AI programmers focus all their time on making one singular smart AI system, and then we use kind of back-end numbers to make them all act like humans, but just act with varying degrees of probabilistic survivability. And by that I mean a hard AI knows to take cover and knows to like reload if you're not doing anything. An easy AI might keep shooting at you and click, 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 his gun's out. He's like, oh man, I have to reload. And he might not dive into cover once you start firing. He might like forget to take cover for a few seconds. So it required a lot more polish, but it saved us a lot of time, and it's a good solution. And I feel like I should explain that image. I like collecting images of bugs, and that was the build where we first unlocked multi-faction fights, because you can have like 2 factions at war with each other in the game, and you can kind of observe or dive in. And it just happened so that because it was the first day in the build, everyone thought everyone was on their own faction, and it made it fun to play because everyone was just shooting each other. It was my favorite bug. I guess also the bigger takeaway from this is wherever you can, work on a game with zombies and dinosaurs, because it'll just make your life easier. So we needed the S-curve, at least I insisted on the S-curve. You could go through the game kind of in any order you wanted to, and we needed a scaling solution, but by scaling I mean like the player is level 5, so the enemies are level 5, or the player's level 10, so the enemies are level 10. That's a good system, but it creates a linear difficulty curve, and I was really insistent that we have, the easy beginning, the really tough middle, and the tapering off power fantasy at the end. So we kind of went with a half-scaling approach, much the same way that we made the AI sort of have one generic brain. We gave the AI one generic set of stats, and we tried to start them out tough and then just make them stronger. And this actually was good because we didn't throw too many enemies at you in the beginning, so you still had the baby steps, but then we could just increase the number of enemies to get that really hard middle, and then start throwing advantages on them. It's getting even harder. And then we get to a point where we're giving them advantages, but the player's advantage is just taking off. And by the end of the game, you feel like a superhero and you're wasting everyone. And we also had, again, one of those uncanny valley problems. We couldn't just scale up our bad guys such that you shoot them 8 times in the face with a shotgun and they live. We had to scale them up in both hit points and smartness, for lack of a better term. This also let us, of course, make a hard difficulty mode where we did have a much more mathematically simple linear difficulty curve, because I figure if you want to play the game on hard, you want to be challenged from start to finish. This is personally, for me, the most difficult part of our game is, you can hear concepts like learning curves and accessibility. It's really, really easy to lose sight of these. Our game is a case study in way too many verbs. You have all these skills, special gadgets you can use. You have martial arts moves. You have all kinds of guns. There's a lot of things you can do in the game. And players weren't figuring out how to use them. We had this strange issue where the offsite testers were baffled by the game. They're like, this is so challenging. I don't know how I'm supposed to get this sequence. And the guy down the hall from me would be like, oh yeah, you just use this, 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 and this. And what we realized is something was happening. These features were coming in slowly. Like, hey, in today's build, we've got the new stealth move. Like, cool, let's try it out. We were seeing all the features come in very slowly, so we just kind of got a sense for what they are and how to use them. The people who got the build in kind of like less frequent intervals just didn't really know how to process all the new stuff that was in every build. I mean, people don't read build notes all that well. And so our solution was, we've really created so much content in that we think it's all old hat to us, but we need to just bombard the player with tutorial content. So we put in, I'd say, there's an hour of tutorial content at the beginning of the game. There's more optional tutorials afterwards, and we tried to just repeat instructions over and over again to the player, even if it seems a little pandering at times. It's funny how people could still get through half the game and not know that a couple things are there. We also added an early game reset of the player character. A lot of the player advantage you get in this game to offset the difficulty you're encountering is sort of chosen by you. If you find shooting really difficult, you get better shooting skills. If you find hand-to-hand combat really difficult, you get better martial arts skills. By putting this reset in early on, we let the player sort of find out what part of the game was challenging them the most, and then meet it with an in-game advantage of their choosing. And that worked really well.